Looks like we're going live today with Jasmine Crockett, congressperson out of Tejas. Go there, Jasmine. Tell us about it.
It is absolutely ridiculous that we have these actions that are playing out by my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. You know, they are really getting dangerously close, in my opinion, to criminal culpability in and of themselves as well. And so,
all right, folks, welcome to GAMcast for August the 8th, 2023. It is a slow news day. So you know what that means? That means I have a ton of stuff to talk about. I'm looking at about 20 windows. I'm going to try to get through them in less than 40 minutes, which is going to take a lot, but we'll see. Anyway, you heard her. They're getting very dangerously close, in her opinion, to criminal culpability in and of themselves. A lot to unpack here, folks. A lot. But first and foremost, let's unpack this. As I've been saying, Trump's just the beginning. He's not the end. We start with him. Now she's already moving on to, well, Trump, of course, he's guilty. Innocent until proven. Oh, lock him up. Lock him up. Now, who else is culpable? We're going to start this bit over because I want you to hear it from the beginning again. I'm going to let her finish it and I'm going to run it again. But this is what I keep telling you. This is the end game, and it's very obvious if you look what the end game is. It's criminalizing political dissent, period. I've said it many times. The modern Democrat Party has been taken over by whatever you want to call them, fascist, communist, so whatever status. There's lots of different names you can use. But they basically believe this. You win an election, quote unquote, and we're going to get to that. There aren't really elections anymore. But you win whatever it is you're supposed to win, and then you get to do whatever you want. There are no limitations. And so they're right now roughshotting over any kind of limitation there is. The Constitution is laughable. If you think, if I say that I tweet this probably once every 2 weeks, but one way to know a Democrat's lying, they start mentioning the Constitution because they can't stand the Constitution. They never have liked the Constitution from the very beginning. They just don't. They don't like, and they don't like it because it's a limitation on power. They believe you win whatever the election is, and then you're in power and you get to do whatever you want. And there are no limitations. And this is all part and parcel of that. The Constitution's limitation, it has to go away. This whole idea of a two-party system, why? That's a limitation on our power. It has to go away. And you just happen to be living through this, right? We lived through the basic end of the Constitution decades ago. Now they're on to just pure political opposition of any kind, right? Elections pretty soon will be next. And they kind of already are next. But anyway, let's let her start. Let her finish the bit. We'll do it again. I want you to listen, just so you understand, because it's a short clip. She's talking about these committees that the Republicans have formed. So we're way back. I mean, I want you to remember, Joe Biden ran with the ridiculous assertion, I never speak to my son about business. Now he's down to, I wasn't in business with my son. I mean, we're long since the time when he needs to be locked up. And I mean, I'm not kidding, folks. These crimes are so over the top and so egregious, right? I mean, it might not be a Nixon situation where you just resign and we pardon you and move on. I mean, they're that bad. And they have the nerve, this person, instead of just in a rational system, you'd have to go, look, Mr. President, you got to go. I mean, you're probably going to have to, Hunter's probably going to have to do some time. I don't know about you, but you at least got to resign, right? I mean, you would think the Democrats in the judicial branch and the Democrat in the legislative branch, which she is, right? You would think they'd go, hey, look, just for the brand, Mr. President, you've got to go. I'm sorry, but there's just too much evidence here. We got to save it. And this party is so rotted, so cancerous. They're literally going to they're going to run with this to save what? Well, see, that's what they're saving, right? In other words, clearly they're not interested in truth, not even close. They're not interested in having any kind of credibility with the American people. They're not interested in being judged. It's all one huge game to them. And why is it one big, huge game to them? A lot of reasons. One is they control the environment. So we talk about it all the time. There are no guardrails. None. Zip, zip, nada. This could be a guardrail. She could be going, I don't think that these committees are going to, they produce this, they produce that. We're going to get to it later with Kevin McCarthy. He's going to explain everything that's going on in a very simple fashion. And you're going to see the way that they push back against the reality. But this is this right here is the modern Democrat. And I did a little bit of research on her history. She ran for this seat. Somebody got appointed to fill it because the person who was there couldn't fill the seat in 2020. She ran, won in the primary, and then ran unopposed in the general, which means she's in a heavily Democrat district. I didn't get a chance to look up if it's a majority-minority district. In the old days, that's absolutely what it would have been. Nowadays, I'm scared to look because it might not be, which is to say what's happening is the black people vote for black people. Look, if she's the best they got, I got no problem with that. If she's the most qualified, I don't care what color she is. But clearly something's going on here in this world that we're living in where, for whatever reason, one group of people gets to vote for their people, and then the other group of people are also voting for those people. I mean, it's just, I don't really understand it. And when it's not like we're getting equality, it's not like, we're talking about, Martin Luther King here or anything approaching it, right? I mean, we're not even talking about Barack Obama. Anyway, let's let her finish the bit, and I'm going to loop it twice just so you hear it. But listen to her clearly say, it's to the point now where you're having committees to investigate my party. I not only reject your ability to investigate my party, which is political speech, folks. This is the most highest protected speech we have. But I think you're criminalizing the government. And I just want you to understand, this is the party that believes in democracy. The Republicans, with all the shenanigans they're pulling, somehow managed to win the House. You win the House. This is the party who had a January 6th committee, broke every rule to do it. I've streamed every one of them. They're completely over the top, nonsensical lies. That's the party that broke every norm there was. But it's you, little Republican Party. You're weaponizing government. I mean, this is just, anyway, let's let her run through and we'll move on to some other things. But you'll see what she's saying. She's just saying it a little bit more directly. Everybody else is saying essentially the same thing. But anyway, take a listen. Come on, give me my audio.
So many actions and continue to express your thoughts. But they are the ones that are weaponizing government when they are taking our committees.
All right, so they're weaponizing committees, and you're entitled to your thought. Your thought, it's the actions, right? We've heard this before. It isn't what you said. It was how you said it. Really? Isn't that a distinction about the difference? Let's take it from the top where she starts and move on to the rest of the show.
It is absolutely ridiculous that we have these actions that are playing out by my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. They are really getting dangerously close, in my opinion, to criminal culpability in and of themselves as well. And so if I were them, I would stop taking so many actions and continue to express your thoughts. But they are the ones that are weaponizing government when they are taking our committees.
One more point on her. Look, folks, that's who the Democrat Party's drawing. In 5 years, whatever percent of the party is that, which let's say it's 65, 70, it'll be 85, 90. There's no guardrails. There's no mechanism for fixing that. I mean, that person should be impeached today. They certainly should be censored for saying that, but nothing will happen, of course. All right, so a couple things here that I've been wanting to talk about this forever, and for whatever reason today just seems like the day because there's all this ridiculousness. You have to create this environment of just idiocy and ridiculousness, and that's what they've done. They are, it's childish to a degree that is scary. So a couple of things I want you to understand now. They passed legislation. They passed the President Biden's infrastructure bill, whatever. They passed that. And now, if you voted for the bill, you should understand how this works. We've got a bill that's got 25 things in it, okay? This isn't the one that says what's in it. The next one's going to say what's in it. We got 25 things in there. You vote against it for any number of reasons. Let's say, you know what, you had 25 things in there. I was in favor of 24, but that 25th one, I'm darn opposed to that. It's unconstitutional. It costs too much. And no, you're not going to leverage me by giving me 24 things I like and then one thing I don't like, or whatever the numbers. Maybe it was 20 you liked, 20 you didn't. Maybe you thought it was an unconstitutional bill. For example, you might be in favor of student loan debt being forgiven. Right? But you might be against Joe Biden doing it with the stroke of a pen. You would prefer, let's put a bill in Congress, let's pass it, right? A bill on Capitol Hill, the thing we used to listen to when we were kids, right? So here's this new trick we have, and it's just outright idiocy. I mean, it's one of those things that when you hear it and it's debunked the first time, you'd be like, well, okay, you got me. That was kind of stupid. I mean, I think secretly you were against a lot of those things, but I can't prove it, so we got to move on. Not in this environment we have now. And so what you end up doing is idiotifying the public. Now you're not voting on actual policies. You're not voting on actual things that the government is doing. You're voting on this idea. You're voting on this fiction. Well, that's not voting at all. I mean, it's a back way of eliminating voting. So anyway, Republicans voted against President Biden's infrastructure bill. Now they want credit for it. And you see this all the time, folks. Sure, yeah, I got some money to my district. Well, you don't know what I was in favor of that part of it. Sure. Or it could be, hey, yeah, I didn't think it was a good idea to go down that route, but Wes got down that route. Why can't I come and explain to people the things that my district gets that the federal government does? It's just all part of the idiocy. But, here's the problem, and this is part of the reason I had that. This is Brooklyn Dad. He's got 1 million followers. He's one of these people that now Elon Musk is paying about $20,000 a month to pay to spread this garbage. That's one thing. Okay, there's one thing. So it's a nutcase out there who runs his mouth. Here's a senator, I believe, from Minnesota, Tammy Duckworth. 1 year ago, every Senate Republican voted against the Inflation Reduction Act. They voted against capping Medicare insulin costs, which is good. I'm glad they did, because capping costs leads to shortage. Sooner or later, they're going to stop making insulin. The government's going to have to step in and do it. And eventually, they'll have to stop. Reducing the deficit, that's just a flat right lie. Creating clean energy jobs, again, is that what it does? Tackling our our climate crisis. Ensuring ultra-wealthy pay their fair share of taxes, right? Now, that's a senator. Now, again, she puts this stuff out. None of it makes any sense at all. So your point is, if there's one thing in here like I didn't like, and I voted against it, that I couldn't be for the other 4 or 5. This is all nuts. And again, this is part of something Pelosi really, really put on steroids when she was taking over the House, right? This idea that we call the bill the Inflation Reduction Act. Therefore, you're against reducing inflation? What kind of an insane person are you? Not to mention the laughability of, I'm going to spend money, I'm going to print money to reduce inflation. Yeah. Oh, by the way, those that are out there bragging about inflation, it's down to 3%, which is still 50% higher than it's supposed to be. But that just means the increase. Doesn't mean it's down. It means it's down versus the others. So it's still going up, just not as fast, right? In other words, you're still piling on credit card debt. Let me as simple as I can say it. Let's say you were to pile on credit card debt at $10,000 a month. That would be alarming, right? It means you're going in the hole $10,000 a month. Then you reduce it to 5, and you're going to say, man, I cut my deficit by 100%. Well, you did, right? But you're still going into debt $5,000 a month. You haven't reversed the tide. In other words, the first month you were in 10, now you're in 15. Next month you're going to be in 20 and 25 and so on. Anyway, how did they get to this point? Well, it's out of place there. I'm going to come back to that. This is where I wanted to get to. I ran across this little nugget this morning, something called the 1735 Project. It's over there at Real Clear Politics. And as per usual, it's part of the reason we don't have guardrails is people get right to the point. It's like Fight Club when Tyler Durden is the guy's in there and he's trying to explain to him, so he's beating him up. So you got it now? And he's like, yeah, I got it. And then he goes, I lost it. And he beats him up some more. You got it now? He goes, I got it. He goes, I lost it again. And he's just playing with the guy. But the thing is here, it's they almost get it. And then I would read the entire article or spend more time on it in the show. The problem is pretty soon it gets, let me just tell you what the problem it is. You keep reading and it goes, for starters, the entire enterprise depends on a losing candidate or a party accepting the results of an adverse election outcomes. Yet powerful elements in both America's 2 major political parties routinely defy that prerequisite. Donald Trump has taken the lion's share of the blame for his performance in the 2020 election and its aftermath. This is justified. Now, folks, I can't read much further when I'm dealing with someone like that. And it's the preceding 4 or 5 paragraphs were brilliant. Why would you do that? And that's part of the reason we don't have guardrails. This person is trying to help, trying to identify a problem that we have, but he or she, they don't identify. It's not attributed who wrote it. They don't even get, right, how deep in the soup they are. But anyway, here's the article. The media is in trouble. Their traditional business model has all but collapsed. Its journalism standards are in free fall. Americans have noticed. Voters in the United States express historically high levels of mistrust in the press. Faith in our nation's political system is disintegrating at the same time. Belief in government has never been lower. These 2 trends, interrelated, mutually reinforcing, have been years in the making. Together, they constitute a crisis in confidence in 2 institutional essentials of self-government. Exactly right. First, the political dimension. As the Cold War ended, Arthur Schlesinger Jr. declared it was important to remember what politics in a democracy is all about. Accruing power is certainly part of the equation, he noted. In the age of mass communication, so is packaging marketable candidates and messages. But in a democracy, politics is about something more than the struggle for power or the manipulation of the image, he wrote. It is above all the search for remedy. Now, does that sound familiar to you? You think the Democrat Party's out there searching for remedy, or do you think they're all about the accumulation of power and the manipulation of the message? And they are at DEFCON 5 when it comes to that. We are all hands on deck when it comes to that. They control the message, the image, almost 100%, just about. I would have thought it would have decreased over the last couple of years, but it's not. And I hate to admit it, but it's true. And then the power, oh my God, they're jailing their political opponents right before your eyes. I saw something the other day where they've literally now jailed, Trump was the 1,090th person jailed over January 6th. And they're not even slowing down at all. Anyway, it goes on to the next paragraph. Picking up on this theme ahead of the 1992 election, political writer E.J. Dionne Jr. I almost didn't read past this point, if you know who E.J. Dionne is, but just suffice it to say he's left, wrote a scathing review of the existing two-party system. His takedown came in the form of a book, Why Americans Hate Politics, which posited that U.S. voters were alienated by the false choices presented by increasingly ideological activities or activists and cynical party professionals. Dionne wrote that Republicans and Democrats had learned to frame political campaigns as battle over issues instead of problems, a crucial distinction. Running to fix the problems, Dionne noted, suggests that after elections are over, the remedies proposed during the campaign can be enacted. Instead, modern campaigns are built around cultural wedge issues designed to defy solutions. Now, again, I know I'm reading this because this person put down in writing what I've been saying to you since I started this podcast over 2 years ago. That's exactly what I've been telling you. They're building a system where I don't have to do anything. All I got to do is create an issue. I got to create this message. And now I got power and I got money and I got sex and everything else as far as the eye can see, and you can't unelect me. Right? This person is saying the same thing. The intent isn't to solve problems, exactly. It's to divide Americans and to entrench those divisions for future elections. I'd go further. I'd say there are no elections. Once you get to that point, once you've crossed that Rubicon, there's no more elections because people aren't voting on issues. Moreover, the idea that remedies are the end game implies some level of compromise, even if the losing side has to concede more than the winning side. This is possible only in an environment of cooperation. In the ensuing 3 decades, every pathology that troubled political observers has worsened. Folks, that's about I came across that. I'm going to follow it. It looks like it's one of those things. Let me go back to the Kentucky governor here. One of those things that they're going to run a series of it. So we may be hearing more about it. But I thought that was pretty cool because they really crystallized what I've been telling you. And listen, if you're not a person of good faith and if you have nefarious motives, why wouldn't you do that? Right? I mean, why wouldn't you? Now, here's the problem. See, it used to be in our society, you had more people like us, and you can't get away with it with us because we're not imbeciles. And we're going to hold your feet to the fire and go, what are you doing for me? Right? Yeah, I don't want to hear about how bad the other person is. Did you win the game or not? Did you deliver something or not? But if you can just turn everything into a narrative, into a wedge issue, then you don't have to worry about it. All right. So there's a bunch of stories I just want you that's been out there that I just want to clue you into. I'm not going to talk a lot, but a dramatically close election in Kentucky gives clues for both sides. Now, I read the article, and the article's a bunch of garbage, but I want you to ask you, riddle me this, Batman. How is it a close election in Kentucky for governor there? Kentucky is blood red. There shouldn't be a question. Now, last time they had a bad, quote unquote, and I do agree was bad. They had a carpetbagger businessman come in and ran, and they ended up getting a Democrat. But you've now had Democrat rule up there for almost 4 years. I think the election's in November, or maybe no November of next year. It doesn't matter. I think it's this November, though. Anyway, why is that, folks? And this is, again, part of the ecosystem that we see, right? And in other words, it's exactly what we're going to get to a little bit later in the show. But, Jasmine Crockett kind of hinted at it. She kind of hinted at it, right? In other words, well, I mean, what is it? There's a bumper sticker I see all the time now when I drive around. Again, I'm in a very, very blue area. It's like, our Democrats aren't great, but the other guys are nuts. Right. And this is kind of the rap that we're working. It's like, I know, man, we've got our problems and, we have some people that go a little too far, but I mean, they don't even believe in elections. They don't even believe in the environment. I mean, they're just nuts. Right. That's how you get it doesn't work for them. Fetterman, it's all about the quality of candidates. They run a vegetable. No problem. They run Biden. No problem. He's an outright criminal. No problem. There are no bad candidates for them. We're the only ones that do it. It's called using your values against you. Sticking with Kentucky here, folks, this was covered before. I saw it at the same time. Normally I cover things first, but I didn't cover it because, frankly, a lot of people played this bit for what you're going to hear. And I think, as per usual, my take is different, and my take has been frankly better. But this is the crowd the other day chanting at Mitch McConnell when he was giving his speech. Apparently, it's something they do every year in Kentucky in politics, and it's a fancy thing that all the people come and show up to. But anyway, here, take a listen. It sounds something like this. Here's the turtle, the loyal quote unquote opposition that, by the way, is being criminalized. He just doesn't know it yet, right? I mean, they're gonna fry Trump first, but he's second or third. But anyway, here's Mitch.
His introduction is longer than my speech. Elaine and I are really excited to be back at Fancy Farm on behalf of the strongest Republican team we've ever run in our state. For those of you who keep count, this is my 28th Fancy Farm. My 28th
Fancy Farm.
I want to thank Father Venters and Stephen Elder for finding a way to keep Fancy Farm going, even with pork prices going through the roof. Thanks to the Kentucky State Police and local law enforcement who are keeping folks safe this weekend.
Folks, anyway, so that's Mitch McConnell at a gathering, a friendly gathering, and they're chanting all kinds of things, one of which is retire, retire, retire. And the only reason I put that is a lot of people, see, people get it, they're upset, they're tired of it. What I think people missed with that, and they're mocking, picking on Mitch McConnell. And we saw a couple weeks back, Tucker was picking on Mike Pence. And I think people like Mike Pence and Mitch McConnell, people are missing the point, right? They're not, I don't think they're the bad people. I don't think they're the problem. I really don't. And I'm not a fan of either one, especially Mike Pence right now. But I think what people are missing here is that the crowd is angry at everybody, right? They what I heard it on Glenn Beck first or something, one of the other quote unquote conservative shows. And his point was, see, they're getting it. I mean, he's got to go. He's got to step down. He's old and all this stuff. And I think you're missing the point. This is the mob. So what you've got is a bunch of people who are entrenched, like Jasmine Crockett. She's the new and up and coming. She's going to continue to get rich. She's going to continue to amass power. You're not going to be able to unelect her. She's going to be able to do whatever she wants, right? And you got these other people like Mitch McConnell, who I think are otherwise good people, right? And he's just in the system. This is the way the system works, right? And he's resisting, right? But this is the mob. You've got a group of people that want to stay the way it is, and you got some people who are like ready. We're done with this. We got to throw this over. And this is dangerous to me because Mitch McConnell at the end of the day is not the problem. Mitch McConnell at the end of the day is not really a bad guy. But what's going to happen is we continue to ride this train and continue this idiocy and no guardrails, right? Where we can slow the car down. We can break it, right? We can keep it from going off the cliff. A lot of good people and a lot of systems are going to be ruined in between. And that's what I see when I see that. That is a little on the dangerous side, right? I mean, I got no problem you want to unelect Mitch McConnell. Go do that. Run against him in the primary. I got no problem if you want to put pressure on him to resign, etc. But I think that kind of behavior right there is something that you're just angry at the system. It's not Mitch McConnell. But anyway, that was my take on it. So made it into the show today. So here's one of the things I've been telling you about for a while. So here's a guy named Mike Singleton. He doesn't have near as big a fee as some of the other people, but he's a senior executive at NBC Universal. He's retired or something. He used to be in the government. Now, these are the types of people that you would think, like, look, just take your, it's like, who is it that used to say it to Larry David all the time? Just take your Seinfeld millions and get out of here. We don't want to hear from you anymore. You think this guy, look, he looks like he's a pretty young guy, certainly younger than me. Probably looks like he's maybe in his early 30s, or 40s rather, late 30s. I mean, you're retired? Take your money and go away. No. Now he basically tweets completely left-wing nonsense every single day, thereby revealing he's leftist and thereby revealing that how long has NBC News been compromised, right? But anyway, so here's what are the things they'll do, and this is part of the environment that we deal with every day. It's just idiocy after idiocy after idiocy. Right in front of your face, there's the idiocy. So Sean Hannity asked Kevin McCarthy directly if Joe Biden took bribes. McCarthy doesn't answer the question. Now let's do what very few people do, but we do that here on the Great American Meal. Let's actually listen to what McCarthy said and see if what he said is an accurate depiction of what happened. Now, this is part of the problem we face because his followers, yeah, that's just Sean Hannity asking McCarthy if Biden took bribes, and he's too stupid. He's not going to answer the question. He's not going to answer it. They're never going to listen to it, and he knows that, right? And that's part of the problem that we have out there. But anyway, let's listen to McCarthy because I think McCarthy actually gives what is a very good answer, and I think does, frankly, answer the question. But anyway, here it is. Come on, don't do that.
Do you believe we are looking at a bribery scandal with Joe Biden, who's now president, actions he took as vice president in exchange for family enrichment?
Well, I don't know of any other family that puts together in government 20 shell companies while you're the vice president of America. My family has no shell companies. I don't know of any other business in America that puts shell companies what do you produce? You don't produce any products. And if you're an expert when it comes to foreign policy, why isn't it Italy or the UK or France hiring you? Why is it just Ukraine, Russia, China, Romania? And why is then at the time advocating and putting your...
All right, folks, you just heard two things. They got a bunch of shell companies. I'm done right there, right? Convene a grand jury. Let's go to trial. I mean, maybe you're innocent, maybe you're not, but you can prove it, right? If that were Trump... They don't have this much on Trump, right? And then there's the suspicion of, well, you're not setting up the shell companies, right? You're not doing business with these traditional powers, right? In other words, you're doing it with corrupt countries, right? The ones that the people at the top more directly control the money. We're becoming very corrupt ourselves. And if you don't believe that, trust me, that's where it's going on. I mean, I was thinking about this when I drove to my golf club on Sunday. Like I drive through, I have to get to the club, one of the richest neighborhoods, I mean, by far, in this county. In this city, by far. And the potholes, literally you would think the German tanks are just rolling through. That's how bad the roads are. Now, what does it tell me when I see that? The richest neighborhood, they're paying the most taxes, and they can't get any roads. It tells me that the government is corrupt, at least in some form. And I could tell you that story, and I could do for weeks podcasts on that. It's just obvious, and the people tolerate it. Right, but so that's evidence of corruption. Same thing here. There's another. That's more evidence, right? When you can just get away with taking all this money, and then what are you actually doing with all that money? Where's it going? Well, obviously it's going somewhere, right? But when you can reveal here are the shell companies, here are the $1 million bribes, here's this, and you have this moron who used to work at NBC going, there's no proof he took bribes. Well, what proof do you need? Do you need him on camera admitting it? Right? I mean, I don't know what you need. I mean, again, they keep saying no evidence, but there's evidence. Anyway, I'm going to move on because I got a bunch of windows to get through, but you got the point. Anyway, they got him dead to rights, and that's the way it is supposed to be. They're supposed to take their time, gather the evidence, and then go into a prosecution. Now, they probably never will with Biden, but anyway, here's another good example. Again, right in front of your face, and this is, what is this guy's name? It's not Chris Hayes. I can't think of his name anyway. He's an MSNBC guy, and he's talking about Trump. Now, they have criminalized what Trump did. I've already told you, I've covered it a lot of times. There's nothing wrong with Trump did. Trump was following the Electoral Count Act of 1887. The process he was following was to the letter what they called for him to do. And it's just as simple. And if you've done enough reading, and I've done tons of it, if you've done the reading about leftist governments, that's what a show trial is. The show trial is you're convicted right in front of your eyes for literally following the letter of the law. But they've made that a crime. In other words, that they think the way it goes, and it's clear, I don't know if I have it in the podcast today, but you hear all these judges' decisions, like judge decides this, judge decides that, judge decides this, and you look at it and it's like, you seem to think that if you just got a judge to say it, it becomes true. That's not the way any of this works. And yeah, when it's Trump, that he's lost every single solitary case. I don't think I've seen Trump win anything. And folks, I mean anything, other than maybe with Cannon, she's won a motion here, or he's won a motion here or two, but he never wins anything, which tells you the system is corrupt. But anyway, here's whatever this guy's name is. I can't remember his name, but talking about Trump's lawyer. So here's a little bit, and you're going to hear a lot of this today, about Trump's lawyer going on TV and apparently admitting the very crime. Take a listen.
Most successful criminal defense lawyers never grant television interviews. Never.
Except Trump's, of course. That's not.
Ultimately, what President Trump said is, let's go with option D. Let's just halt. Let's just pause the voting and allow the state legislatures to take one last look and make a determination as to whether or not the elections were handled fairly.
That is a Trump criminal defense lawyer quoting Donald Trump committing a crime.
Okay,
And then at
and
the
just so
end-
you understand, we've been through it before, but we have new people all the time, especially I'm on like 5 different things. I liked it the old way when we first started and went out just on the podcast, because then I could track who was listening and where they were listening. Now it's much more difficult. But anyway, so that's just him following the Electoral Count Act. We've been through it. It's the Green Bay sweep. We had 7 states. We had Ted Cruz and 7 other senators, and we had 137 congresspeople. They were going to object. That was going to cause a pause. The pause, then the legislatures could go, hey, what is going on here? That was the idea. Get some people behind it. Really take a look. The act already provides for it. And again, but they've already criminalized it, and it's clear they're criminalizing it. In other words, to follow the act and challenge it, that's a violation. So this is another one I just want you to see. So this is the Fulton County Sheriff. Before I play him, though, let me update you on a couple things. There have been a lot of barricades have been put up. Roads have been closed over the last couple of days in Fulton County. An indictment is imminent. It may even have happened when I started today. I seriously, every day when I finish the podcast now, the last couple of days, I have every belief that Trump is going to be indicted. He is going to be indicted in Fulton County, because at this point, folks, there's no reason not to indict him. Because they've all got the memo. The memo is, if you're the DA and you decide you want to indict that person, you do it. Well, what about the rule of law? What about the elements of the crime? What about beyond a reason? None of that. If I decide I want to do it, I want to do it. And again, apparently you can get away with it. I, as a citizen of Fulton County, I am dearly concerned that crime is out of control. There's a backlog, and anybody will tell you this. They are backlogged as far as the eye can see. I don't know how they have time to do this over something that happened 3 years ago. The feds have already looking at it. Like, I don't even know why in the world, but she got time to do it. And again, I want you to understand, wherever you're going, what's somebody in a position of power? There's only so many hours in a day. There's only so many people at work, right? If you're spending, 40, 50% of your time going after Trump, that's 40, 50% of your time that's not doing something else that you were supposed to do, which I assume is to take care of crime going around Fulton County. So what's going to happen? Well, that crime's not going to be punished and is going to go higher. But anyway, so the sheriff out there, and this is, again, this person needs guardrails. They need to listen to somebody outside of it. So here's what you hear from the Fulton County Sheriff about Trump and a mugshot.
Unless someone tells me differently, we are following our normal practices. And so it doesn't matter your status. We have mugshots ready for you.
We got mugshots ready for you. Isn't it funny? And let me explain to you why this is idiocy, okay? Trump has not done mugshots. He has done fingerprints. Now, why is that? Well, let's use our common sense, right? Why do we do fingerprints? Well, because I don't know what your fingerprints look, right? Even Melania doesn't know what Trump's fingerprints look like. So we got to have those for identification. Is there somebody out here who doesn't know what Donald Trump looks like? Do you think they mugshot every single solitary person? No, they don't. Not somebody you know who they are. What's the purpose of it, right? And again, this is a person, and again, unless somebody tells me differently, you're the flipping sheriff. And just a real quick constitutional thing before we move on. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why we elect sheriffs locally, and even the federal government, not yet. They can't override it. So this person, I don't know who would tell him differently, because it's really up to him. But again, it's all just going to be a show. And again, it bothers me because I live in this county, and that these people think that I want them using my tax dollars and their power to harass somebody and not actually go do real things. And I do wake up in the middle of the night going, what aren't they doing that ought to be doing? But moving on. So here's Victor Shee. He's one of these young Democrats. But again, I keep saying this all the time. The environment creates this person. This is a person that otherwise a few years ago would have been doing something else. I don't know what it was, playing pickleball or whatever young people do. But now he goes into politics. And this is the type of person they bring in now, okay? Breaking. Special counsel Jack Smith responded to Donald Trump's legal team's response and doesn't mince any words, saying that they are trying to, quote, try this case in the media rather than the courtroom. Jack Smith sees right through what they're trying to do, and it's glorious. 2 points here. He's being taught that hatred of your political opponent is a good thing. That's pure fascism. Number 2, folks, imbecility is not a strong enough word. Jack Smith is accusing someone else of trying to try the case in the media? I mean, really? He of the leak every day? Him of the felonious criminal leak time and time and time again? Really? So wait a minute. That's just obviously idiocy. He's in bed with the media. He literally hands them documents constantly. Now, maybe not him, but he gets it done, right? What in the world, son? I mean, you got to be stupid to think that. And then the question is, well, wait a minute. Why are you trying to gag Trump? See, oh, he's tough and he doesn't mince words and he's strong and he's so erudite and he's so everything. He's a petty criminal, right? He's so petty that he doesn't even want Trump to be able to talk. He's going to be the one that leaks stuff to NBC and ABC and the New York Times and Washington. Trump can't even go out there and speak about it. I mean, but again, folks, this is what, and he can get away with that either because he's brainwashed, cognitive dissonance, or more likely, or some combination thereof, he never hears from anyone else. If I could, and it's funny, I was listening, who was I talking to the other day? I was talking to somebody the other day about young people, and we were talking about this idea that it's one thing to not know something. That's fine, right? I mean, ignorance is bliss. It's one thing to not know something, but if you then, let's have a conversation, let's talk through this. And it happens in my work life all the time. Younger lawyers, you can't even explain to them why an extension is not only good for me, it's good for you. You can't walk them through it. They just don't have the ability to think. They're so, well, no, I don't want to do that. Yeah, but let me explain to you why you do want to do that. And there's just no connection that can be made. The synapses just don't fire. And it's scary. Anyway, so here's something I've been wanting to talk about, and I talk about a lot, but I just want you to understand what's going on. This is a graph of the federal budget and outlays, and I make this point on Twitter every so often, but you can't make it too many times because I want you to understand why so many people are happy about this. I think right now we're spending about 45% of some of GDP on our government. That's World War II levels, folks. I mean, that's scary. When there's no emergency, it's very scary, which means the government pretty much dominates what's going on here, which is also scary, right? But anyway, there's a lot of reasons why that's bad, but just imagine World War II, you're fighting that, right? And there's controls on things and there's certain things you're not even allowed to have because you got to sacrifice for the war effort. I mean, that's an existential crisis. What's the crisis now? The whatever the dispute's going on in the Ukraine, the environment that is the same environment that we've had for years and years and years, the extremists. I mean, they just invented all these things. They've concocted them to the point. My mother, less so my father, but my mother certainly did, was, teenage years during the war years. She remembered what it was like, rationing, things like that you had to do because of a world war. You're essentially doing the same things now. The only difference is they're not actually making you ration. They're just printing the money, which means the ration's going to come sooner or later. And when it does come, it's going to be a lot worse. But I just want to run a couple numbers by you so you understand, okay? So in 2019, which was right before COVID, right before the pandemic or the plandemic, depending on which way you want to look at it, right? Outlays of the governments was about $4.4 trillion, which had grown from $4.1 trillion the year before. In 2020, outlays of the government were $6.55 trillion. Okay? So you went from 4.44 to 6.55, almost a 50% increase. Historic numbers. Now, again, the excuse was, well, we got to do it because of COVID. Got to do it because of COVID. All right, well, then you get through COVID, you spend more money the next year. It gets up to $7.249 trillion. Okay, all right. Well, then Biden takes over, and he brings it, quote unquote, back. This is where he lies and says, I reduced the deficit. He does take it from 6.55 to 6.01, or 7.24 if you want to look at the next year to 6.01. Okay, that's true. So, but again, you got to understand it was already extremely high. Since then, it's 2023, it's sitting at essentially year over year, not changed. And then it's going to start increasing again. Right now, the projection is 6.18, 6.50, 6.74. Ergo, in 2019, we're about 4.5. We ratcheted it way up to 7 midway through the pandemic. Then we came back down to 6. All right. Now, what's 1.5 over 4.5? It's about a 33% increase that we're not going back, folks. In other words, they created the emergency came up. Well, I don't know, whatever you want to believe, you believe. That's an excuse to increase our budget by 33%, and now we're never going back. Let me explain it to you very simply. Hey, Great American Male, you know what? We got a bunch of legal cases coming in. You're just gonna have to produce a lot. You're just gonna have to bust your butt. You're gonna have to work. It was a 40-hour work week. We need you to work a 60-hour work week. 50% increase. That's a lot. Yep, gotta do it. And then the emergency went over, the cases went over, and I'm still working that. So when am I gonna stop working this 6 hours? Those cases are all gone. No. We need you to keep working that. No, we're not gonna pay you any more money. But the emergency's over. I understand when there's an emergency, all hands on deck, right? You cannot forget that. Let me just say it one more way, and I'm going to move on. Okay? I want you to understand, if we were spending at 2019 levels, right, with the money that we're bringing in this year, we would run a $300,000 surplus. All right? All I want you to do is go back to 2020 levels. That's all I want you to do. The government at that size, which was not a small government, and our outlays right now, or money coming in, we'd be able to reduce the deficit by about $300 billion this year. Anyway, moving on. So it turns out the gentleman in the George Floyd case, I didn't really follow George Floyd because I saw it for the hoax it was from the very beginning. None of this has made any sense to me, but whatever. But I just want you to understand where we are, where we're going. There are no guardrails. There's no ability to push back. People are just, losing their minds. So this gentleman, 3.5 years later, he gets sentenced. Now, he's an Asian guy. He was in the back over like 30, 40 yards away, holding the crowd back because the crowd was getting a little unruly, and St. George Floyd was choking. He was choking before the... We all know what happened there, for crying out loud, okay? It is what it is. This guy was just holding the crowd back. Well, he got sentenced yesterday. 57 months in state prison, on top of, I think, 3.5 years as a federal rap he's got to run. And I want you to listen to the judge as he's speaking to this person. Send this person away for 57 months, right? For those of you in Rio Linda, as Rush would say, that's 4 years and 9 months on top of. So he's going to add them together, not going to serve them concurrently because they're fed in state. Anyway, take a listen.
After 3 years of reflection, I was hoping for a little more remorse, regret, acknowledgement of some responsibility, and less preaching. I'm not going to rehash all the facts from my order, which I found that the things you did and the things you didn't do make you guilty of this crime. I can rehash all that.
So, folks, if you're watching it in the podcast, it really is better if you're watching it live. But anyway, Twitter, YouTube, Rumble. And by the way, if you're on Rumble or YouTube, please subscribe and like it. It really does help content creators. I can't tell you how much it helps us out if you do that and tell people about it. But anyway, folks, if you're watching it, this guy, this face, 3.5 years later, I wanted some contrition. This person should never be around power. I don't know what he's learned over the last 3.5 years. What I learned is we overreacted, is what we did. Frankly, I'd be thinking at this point, maybe we find a way to get this guy on probation or give him the lightest sentence possible. But for this person, you're going to jail for, I don't know if this is a maximum, it's got to be pretty close, right? And then the actions you didn't take, actions you could have taken. What was he supposed to do? We now know that George Floyd was going to die because he was a drug addict and he had overdosed. And the interaction with the cops probably didn't help, but it certainly didn't cause it. And now this guy wasn't even the guy with the knee. This was the guy over here just minding his business. Imagine you went to work one day. Next thing you know, all because of this thing, you're going to jail for 57 months on top of the 3.5 federal rap you got. Anyway, folks, again, there's no guardrails. You would think that there would be some mechanism for that person to be correct, but there isn't. All right, this one's a quickie. We got to move on. I still got a bunch of stuff to get to. So this is a quickie. This is Gretchen Whitmer, and I don't know why anybody thinks this person's presidential, but anyway, here she is. She's telling us what she's doing today. This is on her Twitter feed. This is a governor of one of the biggest states in the union, and here's what she's taken to Twitter to tell you. And it should tell you a lot.
Help prepare some school meals. Thanks to the bipartisan education budget I signed a few weeks ago, every public school student will get free breakfast and lunch this fall. It's a big deal. It saves families $850 a year per student.
All right, so the governor is working on bragging about meals in schools. Apparently now you get breakfast and lunch. Anyway, I think that's a problem we solved a long time ago. I wasn't aware there were people starving in the United States, but apparently, unbeknownst to me, people are going hungry, and even though we can produce food, anyway, folks, that's part of what we talked about with that article in E.G. Dionne, right? That's not a person that's introducing policies and solving problems and solutions. That's a person that's creating a reg issue. And now, guess what? I'll never, ever, ever, ever not be elected. And we just went through the numbers. If I can just keep spending money and printing money as long as I want, and to everything it's just more money, more money, more money, more printing, how do I ever get unelected? If I don't have to solve any problems. But anyway, so this is the headline out there. John Eastman is in the middle of a disbarment proceedings in California. He just, and I think he means he just asked them to be definitely postponed because there's growing likelihood he'll be criminally charged. He's one of the co-conspirators in the Trump January 6th case. And I covered this. I wrote on it on Substack a while back. Saw this one coming. barreling like a freight train down the line a long time ago. I want you to understand, it's not just Trump. It's not just John Eastman. It's every one of you and me. You give him permission to do it to Trump and him, give it permission to do it to every single solitary one of us. We used to understand that. But I want you to understand, they're not just criminally prosecuting some of them, right? The ones that aren't, they got around to it. But even before then, they were trying to get Eastman disbarred. Now, what do you think that does? That tells every lawyer out there, hey, don't you even think about representing somebody the system doesn't like. Oh, you want to represent that officer that was 50 yards away and was just trying to do crowd control, didn't even know what the heck was going on, but he just didn't want people rushing the officer? You want to represent that person? Anyway, here we go right here. So for the second time, and this is George Conway, who I saw early this morning on Twitter get referred to as a high-profile attorney. Again, it's all narrative. It's all a joke. The only reason he got quote-unquote famous was he was married to somebody who was connected to Trump, and it was a little bit of a foil. That's all it was. And now, to this day, the system has created this guy. So anyway, and for a second time, Judge Kaplan has held that in ordinary English parlance, as opposed to the specific narrow technical definition under New York's penal code, the jury found Donald J. Trump raped E. Jean Carroll. This story's been going on for a while. So this judge issues an order. He doesn't even have to do it. You're not supposed to do it. When you issue an order, you're supposed to, it's just to be narrowly tailored to achieve the desired necessary result. You're not supposed to expand upon that. You're not supposed to make pot shots at people. Increasingly, Democrat judges do this. Increasingly, they're doing this. All right, it's a problem. It's not good. And it's the reason they're doing it is they get famous for doing it. Now, this guy Kaplan, he probably digs it. So when it was pointed out that by a lot of us going, hey, the jury, there was a choice of saying rape, and then there was a choice of saying sexual assault. The jury chose to say sexual assault. They specifically chose not to say rape. He doubles, triples down on it. And again, I'm going to read what he writes, but this is, again, how is this justice? How is this the rule of law? How is this supposed to work? And who does it benefit? Do you think it benefits the conservative judge who's following the law and doesn't do that? Do you think it benefits the party that constantly tries to create lies and demagogue? Who do you think it benefits? And again, folks, they've gotten there's no institutions they don't have. Right? I mean, they're working on the Supreme Court. They don't only partially control that one. But anyway, as the court explained in its recent decisions denying Mr. Trump's motion for a new trial on damages and other relief, based on all the evidence at trial and the jury's verdict as a whole, the jury's finding Mr. Trump, quote, sexually abused Ms. Carroll, implicitly determined that he forcibly penetrated her digitally. In other words, that Mr. Trump, quote, did in fact, quote, rape, unquote, Ms. Carroll. Okay, again, I've been debunked 3, 4, 5 times. Shut up. I'm the judge. The truth is what I say it is. And it's just that simple, okay? Anyway, all right, so this was something that went viral. I almost put it in the show yesterday, but I didn't just because I don't do a lot of cultural stuff. But here's a young girl, TikTok influencer. She put this out, I think, 2 days ago. May have been yesterday. Doesn't matter. Anyway, here's what she has to say about San Francisco.
I'm literally shaking right now. I was just getting groceries and I live in San Francisco and I never really feel fully safe. If you live in San Francisco, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And I just got groceries. I'm walking out of the store and this guy is walking past me.
Oh, come on.
And then I say, excuse me, did you just spit in my face?
Wait a minute.
Spits in my face. And says, move, you stupid bitch.
All right, here we go.
And this guy is walking past me and says, move, you stupid bitch, and he spits in my face. That's all over my face. And then I say, excuse me, did you just spit in my face? And he says, move or I'll rape you. There's also people everywhere, and everyone's just walking by because they're like, I can't handle something else in San Francisco. It's always something else. I don't even know why I'm posting this. If you live in San Francisco, do you feel this way all the time? I don't feel safe.
All right, folks, I did have one slight interaction with this. It was to my subscribers on Twitter, so I'm not going to tell you what it is. But I did have something to say about that. As per usual, it's a little different than what most people had to say about it. But anyway, she apparently came back today, and a lot of people had a view of it, which is, look, girl, you voted for this, essentially. This is what you wanted. Where do you think the policies that you care about lead to, right? They lead to people, assuming you're telling the truth. The reason I laughed at it this time is because I don't necessarily think she's telling the truth anymore. But when I saw this, I was just like, well, you voted for that. I mean, where do you think it was going to go? You know, when you defund the police, when you promote this kind of thing, where do you think it's going to lead? Anyway, so then she came back, and today she decided to post this about that video that you just heard. And I want you to imagine the perpetrator. She was in someplace. She was leaving. The person like spit in her face, and she said, "Excuse me, did you just spit in my face?" And he was like, "Get out of my way or I'll rape you," or something like that. That's what I want you to imagine. What do you think that person looks like? And this is not a racial thing. I want you to imagine the clothes they're wearing. I want you to imagine, how tall they are, whether they're a man, a woman, whatever, not just race. I want you to imagine. And then here she is today explaining that all of us, whatever was in our imagination, was just dead wrong.
No, it was a very well-groomed and well-dressed white man. Also, this is incredibly racist, and you will be blocked now. Goodbye.
So now she tells us that it was an incredibly well-groomed white guy. Because, incredibly well-groomed white guys go around and spit in people's faces in public and, say, "Hey, if you don't get out of my way, I rape you." That's what they do. Not a biker white guy. No. That wasn't who it was. No. Not at all. Nope. Not a homeless person white guy. No. A very well-groomed, right, white guy, right? A business person. That's who's doing all the crime. Anyway, folks, this is just literal insanity. Couple more and then we're done here. A little longer than I wanted today, but we shall see. Here we have, again, I have 2 or 3 of the same kind of bits here, but I want you to understand, this is Ari Melber, who's one of these people who is in with the Democrats. We now criminalize dissent. And so you're not going to get away from it. And I know there's some people out there that aren't Trump supporters, that are DeSantis supporters. And well, we just do this. I mean, I literally had to go to, as you know, I had to go to St. Louis on Friday. Speaking of which, programming note, I may not do a podcast tomorrow. I got to be in court at 2. So I'm not sure I can work it in with you. I think I can do a short one and then get up there, but I'm not positive. So if you don't hear from me tomorrow, I'll be back Thursday. But anyway, and we were talking, and I had this same conversation on the plane ride back. I'm like, well, who are you? I'm from Tim Scott. And I just like, okay, I'm not even going to have a conversation. One of my best friends is like, you know what? I'm not even going to have a conversation about this. You're not for Tim Scott, but whatever, just let it go. But they think if we just get somebody like Tim Scott, the racism will go away. If we just get somebody else, the election stuff will go away. The election wasn't right. I don't know what wasn't right about it. And the fact that you as an American, you should be able to question everything. Elections, quote unquote, science. If you can't, it's not science, it's not election. But here we go with this bit.
Put aside some time for this.
Oh, come on. Why this thing's act up, I'm going to have to reset it today before I broadcast again.
And then get into the case.
All right, here we go.
Put aside some time for this. I want to start with a couple quick things and then get into the case. But first and foremost, Donald Trump lost the 2020 election. You accept that fact?
All right, now again, folks, you don't apparently know what facts is. And I know he's an attorney, so I know he understands the difference. You don't know that. No one knows that. It's not knowable whether that's a fact or not. Now, it is knowable that President Biden was certified. It is knowable that he put his hand on the Bible. It is knowable that he is the 46th president of the United States. That's all fact. But who won the election, quote unquote, like who actually did, we don't know that. And again, this kind of deadpan stuff they do, they're never going to let you out. This is not about the truth. This is not about having a rational debate. This is not about me and you and discussing policies. That's what we started the show today talking about that. That's not what this is about. This is about wedge issues. And this is one of the biggest wedge issues they have. We can do elections any way we want, and you can't question them. There's no questioning what we do. All right, take a listen. Come on. Gosh.
There's a large portion of the country that has issues with the 2020 election. There is still discussion about things that went on.
Large portion of the country believes in ghosts or horoscopes. I'm asking you, do you accept the results of the election that Donald Trump lost?
Well, I'm just here as an attorney representing a client, but I think the important thing is...
I'll keep moving. I want to give you the opportunity to answer it. It's a very easy question to answer. If you
right,
can't...
Anyway, they're never going to let you out, folks. They're just not. And again, the reason he can do that is the environment that he lives in, right? Because you never get to question anything. It's just the end of the day. They said it, and then, we're going to bring you on. We're not going to let you get past it, and we're going to have to keep it going. All right, here we go. Al Franken, this is going on. I just want you to know, but this is more just want you to know what's going on. I'm not really going to take a position on it because it's kind of complicated. But anyway, today this is Al Franken saying that Ohioans should vote no on tomorrow's, which I think is today, constitutional amendment to raise the threshold. So apparently, and I didn't know this, apparently in Ohio, you could propose a constitutional amendment with a mere 50% of the vote. I said I wasn't going to take an opinion on it, but I am. That's a bad idea. Okay. But anyway, they're talking about raising it to 60%, and the Democrats are mad because they want to, of course, keep it at 50% so they can put a bunch of foreign money in there and try to get abortion made to be whatever, some kind of right in Ohio. I tell you all that to tell you this. Again, there are no more elections because we don't know what's going to happen in Ohio, because part of the problem we have nowadays is money pours in from all over the place. So this should be an Ohio decision for Ohioans, but it's not. If you look at the money, I forget, I heard it yesterday. I mean, I think there's money, like the top 6 states are all Yankee states, and they're all pouring money in there so that dwarfs whatever the local thing is. I tell you all that to tell you this, okay? Right now, you can still get away. You can still go to Florida. You can still go to Texas and other places. But they're quickly working on closing that trap door. And this is one of the ways they're going to do it. That's the main point there. Here we go. All right. Trump challenges to Fani Willis' ability to proceed in Georgia are dead. Judge Schuster dismisses Trump's mandamus petition with a tip of the hat to Judge McBurney's opinion. It looks like indictment number 4 is officially on the horizon. Of course it is. I already told you earlier that they've already got the street blocked off, the sheriff's running his mouth about mugshots, etc., etc., etc. It's coming. And again, at this point, you know it's coming. I mean, once Bragg went, the dam almost broke, but certainly once Jack Smith did the boxes hoax, it's it. That's over. I mean, and there's a lot of reasons why it's over. One, the Rubicon's been crossed. We've gotten past that. We don't prosecute our political opposition. And if we do it, we certainly don't do it on a president, right? And you got all these constitutional issues that you got to deal with, right? That's all gone. But let me take a couple other things that are gone, right? We've now shown all the prosecutors, right? Bragg went, then Jack Smith went, and they produced these indictments. These indictments are embarrassing. I would be afraid to put my name on them. They're that poorly written. They're that poorly constructed. But what has happened after that? After the boxes hoax, Jack Smith, it's now been 2 or 3 months. He hasn't been disbarred. Republicans haven't brought impeachment. All the commentary that people like me and way more famous people than me that have said hasn't put a dent in it. It hasn't made it in the New York Times. It hasn't made it into the Washington Post. It hasn't made it on the MSNBC or CBS or any of those. Nobody says, well, it's kind of strange. I mean, I hear this idea that under Article 2, if we can make laws that control how the president handles documents, well, we basically handicap and don't really have a presidency. What about this, Mr. Smith? He never has to answer for it. He then can drop and amend the indictment whenever he wants. I mean, I've talked about it before, but the last 6 weeks or so, something bad comes out for Hunter Biden. The next day, he drops another indictment. Or he amends the thing or does something. I mean, he's using it to control the narrative. I mean, there's been no pushback. There's been no guardrail at all. So if you're now Fani Willis or Jack Smith Part 2, we say, well, I got away with the first one. Why not another one? Well, I got away with that one. Why not another one? I mean, at this point, there's no reason not to. Not one single, well, there's a few. Dershowitz has, and I think Tulsi Gabbard has. But, I mean, the few Democrats, who've all been ostracized, by the way, that have even spoken and said anything about, well, this probably isn't a good idea. This might be political, right? So at this point, if you're Fani Willis, there's no reason not to do it. And on the contrary, I mean, Jack Smith is hailed as a hero. I mean, you heard Victor Shee talking about him earlier. Oh, he doesn't mess around, doesn't mince words. Why, he's not going to fight this case out in the press. He's not going to fight this case out in the media. I mean, it's let me say it this way. Not only are there no guardrails, at this point, they are encouraging people to do the very thing that they shouldn't do. You're encouraged to do this. It's almost as if you go down the street and assault people and they're paying you for it. I mean, it's not really almost as if. But a reason I kind of brought this one in, and again, it looks like I'm going to be right at an hour, but we're almost done. So I want you to understand how bad this is. And I hadn't said this in a while, but they will debunk themselves, within a chapter, within a page, within a paragraph, sometimes within a sentence. This is within a few sentences, okay? So she tweets what Bill Rankin, who is a local AJC is Atlanta Journal-Constitution, which used to be the old Atlanta Journal, Atlanta Constitution, they merged. That was back in the day when you had a morning newspaper and you had an evening newspaper. For reasons that I won't go into anyway. So senior judge Stephen Schuster dismisses the writ of mandamus filed by lawyers for Donald Trump. He was basically trying to say that Willis shouldn't be allowed to continue with this because she ran saying she was going to come after me. She's fundraising going after me. There's clearly a lot of political things that are going on. She should be recused, and you should bring somebody in who isn't dumb enough to signal, hey, I'm out here going to get Trump, and will you send me money to do it? And another point about that, again, you've got the judicial branch, and you got the executive branch, and you got the legislative branch. In the Democrat Party, those have merged to the point where there's no difference among them. In the Republican Party, you still have some differences there and some checks and balances, but not there. And that's an important point. These judges, somebody ought to be going, hey, wait a minute. I can't let you go this far. I mean, you can't fundraise off this, Fanny. You can't do that. Yeah, I mean, I'm at least just go. At least put something in there that says, well, it's not the desirable, but it doesn't reach the level. But anyway, in doing so, Schuster seems to take a dig at Fulton Judge Robert McBurney. His footnote reads, "Please excuse the lack of rhetorical flourishes." Now, I don't know how you interpret that. I think any person of good faith objectively says when Judge Schuster says in a footnote as to Robert McBurney, please excuse the lack of rhetorical flourishes, what I think he's saying is, hey, I'm going to issue the ruling and I'm going to decline to say things in my orders. Like I forget what one of the ones that McBurney said, this brief or something is a wine that this court won't serve. Like, ha, 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 Trump filing motions is wine, like wine you drink or won't serve. And he's done that several times. He's basically said, no, relief denied. And then he goes on and on and on about saying negative things about Trump that really are rhetorical flourishes that you don't need. The reason I tell you all that is, again, right, the challenges are over, right? He dismisses Trump's mandamus action or petition with the tip of the hat to Judge McBurney's opinion. Is that a tip of the hat? But again, she's done it right in front of your eyes, right in front of you. And she expects you not to read it, not to notice, right? Anyway, at least one judge is doing it the right way. But I wanted to finish with that because I really do think today or tomorrow, certainly this week, you're going to get the, I guess it'll be the 4th or the 5th. I'll lose count. But we're going to have the whole Trump thing. And it's going to be the phone call, which is obvious. We've all heard it. There's nothing there. I mean, it's just garbage. And it's all going to be number 2. Michigan's already done it. But part of the electors plot. The difference is they did it in Michigan. They didn't name Trump. Here, I think they are going to name Trump as part of it. And who knows? Maybe she'll be just crazy enough to bring in Lindsey Graham or somebody like that. Because I do think the sooner people like McConnell and Graham and others realize they're going to be pulled into this and it's not going to be Trump. Because I think they're like, hey, yeah, I get it. We stay in the system. I get a nice cushy job from my wife and all those other things. And this is great. And I get to hang out at the parties and I get to stay. I would have had to retire 15, 20 years ago under the real of the people, by the people, for the people situation. But now I can just stick around to 80 and continue to make money and hang out and do this stuff. I think they just think, oh, he rocked the boat too far. We can stick around. As soon as one of the two of them get caught up in it, or when they get caught up in it, that will maybe be a chance so they'll finally figure out what's going on. But anyway, all right, you're now all caught up to date with the news of the day. And if you enjoyed this live stream /podcast, I hope you tune back in tomorrow.